I'm here with author Dr Charles Margerison, who has written an interesting and unusual book on innovators. He provides virtual interviews with people who left a mark on the world and identified things they had in common. Charles, can you tell us more about this?
I've long been interested in people who changed our world, people who came up not only with a good idea, but were able actually to transfer it and to make it work. So that today we live in a much better world. We have electric lights, we have cars, we're able to go into hospital and get good treatment. All of these came from people who were innovators, and therefore I put together a book on innovators and tried to recreate perhaps what they would say if they came back today. And I looked at people from the time of Galileo through to people in the 17th, 18th centuries, and particularly in our own time, in the 20th century. And all of them had fascinating lives. Very often we talk, for example, about Einstein, and we think we actually know what Einstein did. But when you actually go back and look at where he came from and what he did in his life, he lived in 3 countries. He started in Germany, he went to Switzerland, eventually ended up in the United States. And yet he was a Jewish person who, and at the time he was living, the Jews were being persecuted. And therefore, as he said himself, he was not only stateless, but literally wandering from one country to another to try and get security. And amongst all of that, he came up with fantastic innovations and brilliant insights which hadn't happened before. If you look at others, Marie Curie, who many people think is French, but in fact she was Polish, and she came from Poland to France to study, and in the process managed to win 2 Nobel Prizes, not 1, actually 2. For her brilliant research and innovation. And so you go on through history and you see people who made contributions and their lives were difficult. And people look back and sort of say, well, how did they manage to do it? Usually because they triumphed over adversity. And what I've tried to do is to recreate in my own words, but really their own words, what they were saying or what they were doing at the time of their own lives.
You say these innovators had a similar approach to problem solving. Can you tell us more about that?
All of them went through the process of research and thinking and how this would work and how that would work, many experiments and trials and tests. But essentially they were going between 2 edges of a continuum. One, they had a problem which they wanted to solve, and of course, what was the solution? Would it work in real practice? And that really became a very interesting journey for me. How do they get from the problem to the solution? Very often it was actually not just sitting there in a quiet room thinking about it themselves, but they'd go out and discuss it with other people, share their ideas, test them, and in the process they would move from another line, from discussion through to decision. And if you put these 2 together, you get a very interesting matrix model. And that's what I began to do, and I began to realize that all of them were moving from problems to solutions through discussions to decisions. And in the process, of course, in the middle of all of that, there are 5 skills. Number 1 is to inquire, to find out what is the problem. And very often you have to do that not just by doing an experiment, by talking to other people, hearing views and opinions, but getting information so you really understand what the problem is. Second thing is, when you've got the information, to make a diagnosis, to begin to explain what all the information is. And these innovators were excellent at gathering information, sifting it, thinking about it, coming up with a diagnosis which could explain why certain things happened in certain ways, which had never been done before. Then what they were able to do was to use the 3rd skill, which was to summarize it all and bring it together in a way that not only they understood, but other people could understand and share with people. Then, what do you do after that? Well, you've got to the problem. The important thing is come to a solution. And they were very good at putting up ideas and thoughts on ways they may actually tackle this, but sometimes they didn't always work. So, for example, when they were trying to create the original telephone, first idea didn't work. When the guy who was thinking up how to fly an airplane, first idea didn't work. So you had to come up with many proposals and sift and evaluate which would work. And then when you had tried those out actually get to the position where in fact you can begin to say, that's what we will do. We'll put this into operation, we'll coordinate. So let me just read one of these. And his name may not be well known, but he's changed the world. He's changed the world for you, changed the world for me, and everybody here watching today. His name is William Shockley. And here is the Innovators story. You pick up your mobile phone and tap in a number. Thousands of miles away, someone answers. Next, you press for information. You get access to the worldwide news. While traveling, you listen to music. You live in a digital world. You take a picture and send it to a friend. And you can also send a text message. Instant communication thanks to technology. All of these things have in common one thing. They all require transistors. I started working on that idea in 1936. That is something which to me really fascinates me. And here is a guy who got a brilliant idea, a transistor, a word at that time people didn't understand. Yet he was able to convert it in about 10 years. And during that time, there was a war going on. But he was able to convert the idea into something today that we take for granted. And as soon as we use a digital camera or we use a digital phone, we're using the ideas that William Shockley developed. And that's what I've been trying to do, is recreate the life and look through how they actually got from the idea to the application.
Great. So how can this approach be used to foster innovation?
I think by understanding how other people have done their innovation and made a breakthrough, that if we look at their lives and look at the processes, then we can replicate it in some way or other. We might not necessarily develop the transistor. We might not necessarily be an Einstein and begin to change the way in which we look at our world. But in our own way, we can become more innovative. And particularly if we use the 5 skills, if we start inquiring, making good diagnosis, summarizing what we found, coming up with genuine proposals which we can evaluate, and then coordinating a response in terms of getting action. Where we will end up is very much the way that people like Jonas Salk, who did the great work on poliomyelitis and was able to crack that disease, coming up with great ideas like Florence Nightingale when she was trying to help people who were in desperate need of medication, particularly soldiers, or looking perhaps at the work of musicians like Wolfgang Mozart and developing great music, or going to people who perhaps are less known, like Harold Neyman, who invented the laser, which today has revolutionized the way we work, has revolutionized operations in hospitals, and touched all of us in some way or other for the better. So all of these people have got fantastic contributions, and we can look at how they did it. But moreover, if we follow the model, which I believe has come out of this, which is basically looking at how you move from problems to solutions through discussions to decisions, and using those 5 skills, whereby you inquire, you diagnose, you summarize, you propose and communicate. Sounds easy, but in real life, those are skills which all of these people developed and used, and today we're the beneficiaries.
Thank you very much for your time, Charles. Truly an inspiration.